reviews podcast. However, this probably isn't so much a podcast, but more so a long review of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, I think is the title. Yes,
Correct,
it is.
yep.
Just wanted to make sure. I was going to call it Black Panther 2, but obviously for anyone who doesn't know, this is Daniel and myself, Ben.
And special guest this evening.
Yeah, special guest. Anyone who's watched our podcast, you've probably heard this one bark, but we're just wanting to get this out kind of fresh. We only just kind of got home from seeing it. We will probably do a non-spoiler review, and then we'll probably take a break and get into sort of more spoiler discussion and so on. So if you haven't seen it, obviously it's just come out. Haven't seen it, please avoid that by all means. Otherwise, if you wanted to listen to it, go for it. But what were your thoughts on this one? So obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, it's the people of essentially set after obviously the first movie and after Avengers Endgame, where essentially they're protecting their home from a evil guy named Namor.
Yeah.
But obviously
The new bad guy.
in real life, obviously we've had the passing of Chadwick Boseman, so essentially mourning the death of King T'Challa within the story. So that obviously covers off sort of where this lifts off from. So what were your thoughts on the movie? I know I've got a few, and obviously a few of them will be saved for the spoiler chat. But what were your sort of initial thoughts on the movie? Obviously spoiler free.
Yeah, overall, I think I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was pretty good. I thought there was a lot of aspects of a fantastic movie, and probably a lot of things that we don't generally see in Marvel films, which I know you're going to touch on a bit. Especially when it comes to kind of it didn't really have too much relevance to other movies, except like small references to certain points in time, but it kind of really kept to its own story and everything that was going on, which I kind of liked. And the acting performances were unreal, which when you think of a Marvel film, you're not watching it because of the unreal kind of acting that's generally on display, but I thought it was fantastic. A lot of the sequences had a very good tribute towards the main man himself, which was fantastic to see. Look, otherwise, I thought it was great. It didn't fully grasp me as a fantastic film. I feel like it dropped short on a few things. I think there was a lot going on all at the same time, but it had great characteristics of a fantastic film, and probably one of the best ones to release out of the current
Phase 4, I think it is. I think this is the end of Phase 4.
Yeah.
This is the last one. I guess I'll kind of go from here. I really enjoyed it. There were a lot of aspects that you don't kind of tend to see in other Marvel films, and the ones you have are always usually the best, and that's kind of the emotional hitting side. When I think of emotional Marvel films, I think, obviously Infinity War, Endgame are probably more your emotional ones. I really enjoyed Winter Soldier, which was quite emotional. This kind of obviously adds up on that. And I think the movie is definitely at its peak when it's actually mourning King T'Challa and the certain moments in the film where they're actually dealing with that death of the character. Obviously, you kind of don't know whether it's the character mourning or the actual actor.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually... obviously, it's quite a sad situation, but they really came to act. You've got the main two. Everyone's really, really good in the film. Tenoch Huerta, I probably butchered that, as Namor is really good, but Angela Bassett as Queen Ramonda is fantastic in this movie, as well as Letitia Wright as Shuri. And this movie is very much Shuri's emotional journey and emotional story herself. But the main problem for me, it's not so much a problem. I just felt like it had so much to deal with. Obviously, it had really big shoes to fill. A lot of people's favorite one is the first one, but you obviously had the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman. So it's got a lot to deal with in that aspect, and a lot happens in the story where there's side characters introduced where they kind of play into the plot, but you're almost it just doesn't kind of sit right in terms of the way the story's actually told.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything else really came to play here. It's probably one of the better Marvel-looking films too. Like the cinematography, the camera work is done really, really well. As well as the costume design. Like, obviously, this is what you expected within the first one. The costume design's fantastic. The score is really eerie at times, but also got those sort of similar score to the first one. So that kind of aspect I really enjoyed, just the film craft. But in terms of the story, it's very much a little bit convoluted, but it is definitely, yeah, as you kind of said, probably one of my favorite of Phase 4's, Phase 4
definitely.
Marvel films. Obviously, they have kind of dipped in quality a little bit, you could say, recently. And I think this film, obviously, one of the biggest thing is this film really goes for, obviously, it's very serious. It's not trying to be a comedy or anything, which we've seen with the last few Marvel films.
It's good to see that take on the film, actually.
I mean, personally, I kind of expected it to be serious, obviously, just because of the subject matter what they're dealing with. If they kind of went for a comedy, it would be probably a bit distasteful in a sense, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so,
no, that's fair. That's fair. Yep.
But no, I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's the best MCU film by any means, but I think it's a really, really, really strong return to form. And I think, I don't really sort of have many negatives that I can touch on. It's just, it felt like certain things were just very hit and miss.
Yeah, it didn't fully fire on everything.
It didn't fire on all cylinders,
Yeah, touching on some of that cinematography side of things, I guess, but kind of touching on some of it, made me cue into it, was the CGI. Like, Marvel's quite well known for just like being a massive CGI fest or being like an
and it's
unrealistic
usually not
level.
great. This film actually,
I actually thought it did that quite well. They used it when it was necessary. It didn't seem like they did a lot of it to really enhance certain aspects.
It definitely felt like a lot of it was shot on location, but when it was used, it was done really well.
Definitely.
And it was as you said, it was only when it was needed, and it wasn't. It didn't end in like a massive CGI fest as well, like the last three have,
or the last 15 movies.
Well, no, there's been like a lot of like, there's been a few, but like they've always been like. For instance, Love and Thunder, you had the massive fight on the black and white planet, and it just looked shocking. And then Multiverse of Madness, obviously.
Shang-Chi. I know that was not part of this phase.
I really enjoyed. I think it was like part of it. I think it is part of this phase.
Oh, the last like 30 minutes, I was like, oh, okay. Like,
I really enjoyed it, and then it went on. Yeah. No, I felt it was really grounded and it really worked. But the film definitely rises to its peaks through its remembrance and obviously kind of paying its respects, and there are actually very much a few really emotional bits in this film for me anyway. I don't know about you, but especially not so much spoilers, but the Marvel introduction with the logo, which they obviously do every film, it just kind of really worked and did really well, and then as I said, you don't know if it's the characters or actors mourning because it's a pretty depressing situation. But no, I really enjoyed it. Probably, as we said, favorite of probably the current phase. Although it doesn't reach the height of the first one, I still think it's definitely a return to form. And obviously coming up with Quantumania, which the trailer obviously released, and we saw that trailer before this. Yeah, that looks really good, and I think that's the next one coming out in Feb. And I can't remember what's past that, but. Other than that, that's kind of all we have probably for a non-spoiler.
Yeah, it was definitely some of the better acting performances, and I think the kind of the matter at hand definitely brought out a lot of that fantastic acting too for a lot of that.
Yeah, which is obviously a depressing situation.
It is very depressing, but props to everyone for really rising up.
Well, actually, props to everyone for even doing everyone mourns obviously differently.
Aspects of this were done through like peak of COVID too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So done fantastic, everything all considered.
Yeah. Definitely recommend watching it. Obviously, it just came out in Australia. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm not sure if it's out in the US, but really good film. We'll probably take a quick break, and if you haven't seen the film, probably stop watching there.
Yep.
If you have, by all means, stick around. We're probably going to chat a little bit more spoilers and go in sort of in more depth of obviously the plot and discuss that one. So we'll be back in a second.
Fantastic.
Easy. So if you've stuck around, it's probably you've either seen the film or you're just happy to spoil it for yourself. Not that we probably will go into too depth really of the plot, but
just so we can touch on
in terms of obviously touching on a few aspects of the film. I don't know if you kind of want to go first or.
I'm not sure really exactly where to touch in regards to it.
I'm
Like
kind of
I
with you.
really, as I said, there was a lot that went great in it, I thought, but it didn't really hit the mark. And I think a lot of that was the plot. Like they were telling a bunch of different stories all at the exact same time, like between obviously the loss of the previous Black Panther, the King, the man himself. They touch on that and then go over the mourning, and it kind of didn't really run around towards, I guess, the current kind of Black Panther until later parts in the film, which kind of surprised me a bit there.
It surprised me, but personally, I actually really enjoyed that because it was able to kind of really develop more the emotional side.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Because if you're obviously seeing it, you probably only really get the Black Panther for 15,
20
25 minutes or so, which is whatever. But I can't remember I can't remember.
They're telling a bunch of other stories too for, obviously some existing characters and some
you've
backstories
got
on some of them. And then a lot of, like, obviously the main warrior chick who got like disbanded.
Yep.
Whatever her name was, but they went through like
Okoye.
her story, and then they followed up with her later in the film, and I just thought there was a lot that was going on.
I thought her story was fine, but where I kind of thought it was a bit convoluted, which like everyone there is kind of a main integral part of obviously Wakanda and the story they tell there.
Happened,
Where it kind of probably lost it a little bit for me is you see the reintroduction of Martin Freeman's character who plays Ross, who's a CIA agent, and you kind of see him come in there, which in the first film it kind of made a bit of sense, and he plays kind of an integral part to the plot in a way, but at the same time you probably could have taken him out.
Yeah, and I'm like, I understand
the main thing I think he's there for is also the introduction of
the ex-wife,
Julia Louis-Dreyfus character, who we've seen in the last few Marvel projects with Black Widow and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, obviously kind of getting the band together of those anti-heroes you see. So you see her kind of come in, and those are sort of two characters that kind of didn't really pay too much service to the plot. And you also have the introduction of, is it Riri Williams? Is that her name? Ironheart, for anyone who doesn't. And you kind of see the introduction there, which kind of makes sense because they both play, like, she also plays an integral part to the obviously plot developing in terms of the vibranium machines and those kind of things. But overall, she didn't really add too much. And not to say either of them did a poor job acting or anything. They did great.
It just wasn't.
It just didn't, like, it just kind of is probably a good 25 to 30 minutes of the plot that they're there for, which probably didn't need to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like that really felt like it was kind of a service to potential Marvel projects coming in the future, with obviously Ironheart getting her own TV show, and obviously Martin Freeman.
The only time they really told anything in regards to kind of that character or any development for her was pretty much at the end of the film, where they talked about the loss of her father and the importance of the car. That was literally the last like 5 minutes of it. It's the only time they really provided great, like, some kind of in-depth to the character. I think it's right. I don't feel like she was given enough story or support behind her for her to really kind of stand out to be important towards this movie.
It kind of just felt like it was a Marvel quota for Ryan Coogler to go, okay, well, we need to introduce Ironheart because we're going to make a TV show, and we need to do this because of this. Which, look, he did a decent job with it. It just felt like they didn't sort of service the plot along properly. And those are kind of probably my main negatives, is they kind of made the film feel a little bit disjointed, not so much disjointed, just convoluted, like just a lot going on, and they're trying to tell a few side plots and things, which in a way, as I said, they all service the main plot. It just probably didn't really need to be there, and in so it added a good 20, 25 minutes all up.
Agreed. What do you think of the final kind of like battle between Panther and Namor, is it?
It made a lot of sense.
I just felt like there wasn't a lot that went on. I always kind of hope for these like super epic fights, and when
you didn't want CGI battles, and
no, but like epic fights. I love epic fights. I love like a struggle, tug of war in a fight until like someone results. But like a 3-minute battle,
look, I tend to agree, but the reality is the way they needed to actually hurt him and impact him took all his power away, which is obviously the dehydration. Yeah.
That's fair. I'm always a bit grunky when I'm thirsty.
Yeah, so like, I mean, it made sense. I do get you. It kind of just felt a little bit rushed, that not the fight, but the conclusion of it.
Correct. And then him flying in at the end.
Yeah, basically they disband. But other than that, I probably don't really have too much to touch on. The end credit scene I thought was really well done. There's only the one for this film.
Yeah, disappointed that there wasn't two.
There is only the one for this film, but I felt like they did that really well. It was obviously a little bit of a longer credit scene because it was kind of a full probably minute or two.
Yeah, well, it actually introduced like more story and background
actually
everything.
Made the movie a lot more impactful in a way for me.
I agree.
Which made sense as to why you obviously see Lupita Nyong'o's character not there, and obviously a lot more weight behind Angela Bassett's performance. And I actually feel like they did that really well, and I would actually genuinely like to see more end credit scenes like this where it kind of actually ties into the film rather than obviously the last few Marvel films we've seen just throw away.
Angela Bassett, she was the one that played...
she's the queen.
Oh, yeah. Who was the... I always suck at
Lupita
names.
Nyong'o, his wife, ex-wife or whatever.
Yeah, the ex-wife.
Yeah,
Because I thought she wasn't in the film for long, but the parts that she played were phenomenal.
Well, she's great. We covered her in the last week's podcast where she's playing the main character in the Quiet Place prequel.
Yeah,
That's
cool.
what we talked
Yep,
about.
yep.
So, she was great. I felt that was really well done. Other than that, I probably don't really have.
Yeah, not much extra to touch on there. I think it's a movie worth watching, and I can
It's probably in my top 20 MCU films. It's when I think about it, like it's definitely one of the better caliber ones. It's just gets a little bit held back by a few kind of side plots that probably didn't need to be there.
Yeah, I feel like if you were taking that out, this movie would have been absolutely phenomenal. If there was more one thing to focus on instead of 17
really needed to
different
focus
stories.
on the emotional side of things.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually, touching on that just before we, I guess, end up this, I really liked how they, instead of like what happens generally in Marvel movies where they use that pain to kind of like, become more powerful and stronger and then fight back towards a bad guy. I really liked how the whole movie represented pain and the massive loss of one person on an entire society and nearly the whole world too. I actually really liked that had that take of that impact.
Yeah, I really liked the way they did it. And that was probably the hardest thing, and I got to pay massive respects, is obviously, like, I can't imagine how difficult it would be to make a big budget film where your main actor's passed away and you've completed a script and you have to change the whole idea and essentially obviously respect that character and that legacy. And I think they did a great job, and I think it kind of shows that it kind of, it's the wrong word, but it kind of shows that these are just mantles, and I really like the fact that they not only respected obviously the actor but the character, and it's something we may see obviously in the future, considering you obviously got Captain America as mantles and things like that, so that might happen. Not a passing, but in terms of like passing it down and things like that.
I was actually going to touch on one of those parts only because I was unsure how the whole scene kind of went. She was supposed to be there for that, the ritual that they do to announce you as Black Panther. But she went there, and then the other guy obviously rocked up and said, the Queen sends her regards. But then he goes to challenge for the throne. I wonder if, like when I saw that situation, I'm like, did she just like give up that then? She took that ability just to kind of fight this bad guy.
I think,
Yeah, and then now she's is she going to give that up to this new person to be the mantle because he's a little bit more on the noble, pure side of things, which was...
I thought it was more just the fact that she just wants to mourn, and she's done... I don't know. Who knows?
I'm interested to see where it goes. They did say Black Panther will continue right at the end then. So.
Will return, which is obviously, as we said, a mantle. So, other than that, that's probably all we got to touch on. Obviously, let us know in the comment section below if you enjoyed the film or what your thoughts were, or if you're a massive DC fan and hate Marvel, or, Marvel fan, hate DC, whatever. Well, I'm sure we'll get some interesting replies. But other than that, feel free to obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, we're mainly a podcast channel. So we've recently chucked up trailer reactions, but we usually every week review all the films that came out that week and chat all things movie news. So feel free to subscribe, and we're on all podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and obviously visually on YouTube. But other than that, thanks for listening to probably just a straight up quick fire review. And other than that, we'll probably see you next time.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.